Nice one. Hey, my name's Ed.
Hi, Elliot.
Nice to meet you, Elliot. Thank you so much, Elliot, for stopping. I'm at Yale, and I've got a tablecloth that says, if eating animal products is a choice, then why do we choose to be cruel? And so you very kindly sat down, and I'm interested to know, what are your thoughts on the statement?
Totally. So I feel like there are ways to enjoy meat, maybe like that are more creative than those already out there, but that are ways to actually not be cruel to animals.
Could you define what those ways would be?
Sure. So I feel like, for example, like in Connecticut, there's, for example, the issue of overpopulation of deer.
Right.
So, it's causing a lot of environmental harm, causing a lot of, imbalances in the ecosystem.
Yes.
And so hunters will go out with their crossbows and painlessly kill the deers and then, enjoy the meat afterwards.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe that's an example, but, you could tweak that system to other things, but yeah.
I think that's a really valid point about overpopulation of deer, especially in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
I'm from London and England, but when I think of overpopulation of deer, Connecticut is the state that comes to mind. I don't know why. Okay, and so I think we have to look at the cause of that. So there's a reason, right? We look at food chains that exist in nature, and they're quite harmonious in the sense they exist to maintain the sizes of populations, and so we have an imbalance, and so we've got to look at why this imbalance has been caused, right? So. And part of the reason is we've removed predators, right? A lot of predators from that food chain. So now we have an overpopulation of the herbivorous animals and no carnivores to hold them in size. And why have we done that? Well, because we've cleared huge expanses of land to make way for agriculture. That predominantly been animal agriculture. And now coyotes, cougars, the carnivorous animals, the predators, well, they've been hunted, and many of them to the point of extinction and beyond, because they were hurting farmers' livestock animals. And so what I advocate for is not to hunt deer. Although I see that as being, for me, that's like putting a Band-Aid on like what would be like a cut artery, right? It's it's not practical. So it seems like a short-term solution.
Take off the Band-Aid at some point.
Exactly, and fix the problem. Go to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that we've destroyed huge amounts of land and we've hunted predators. So I advocate for remove animal farming. Go vegan, remove animal farming, and then we allow the land that we don't no longer need to repopulate, but because we've got no longer livestock animals that farmers need for profit, we can reintroduce natural predators. And it'll take a while, of course, but over a long period of time, this process of what we call rewilding will somewhat balance out the population sizes. And another point is, let's say we all fall into that idea of thinking, we no longer buy meat, dairy or eggs from a supermarket, and we only hunt deer. We now have, several 100 million people rushing into the forest to shoot deer, and that in itself will cause an ecological imbalance. The reason it's somewhat sustainable is because not many people do it. But take out the 98% of people that buy farmed meat and replace them with hunting, and all of a sudden you have an imbalance of a different kind.
Right.
What do you reckon?
Well, I would propose, for example, creating an artificial, or maybe not entirely artificial, but somehow creating an environment where you could have deer roaming free, that they could live their whole life, and instead of having their life ended by getting eaten by a natural predator, or instead of how deer normally die naturally of starvation, or however they normally die, I feel like maybe we could as humans step in and then kill them to eat, and I guess I would but they would still get to live their whole life in their natural environment.
I believe I see, and the logic I think is very clear. I think it's been very logical, but I believe that logic is being applied slightly disingenuously, in the sense of where we're almost using the idea that we want to help the deer as a justification to kill them. Now, nature is of course incredibly cruel. There's no denying that, right? And many animals die in horrible ways. But that is nature, and that is the way that the world is designed to be. And so I don't believe that we should then hunt deer because we say, well, they could die in a more painful way. I think, many deer who we hunt wouldn't be killed in that way. And then if we hunt mother deer, leave the children, there's a whole host of ethical implications which would mean that morally we would still be somewhat I would believe deficit, morally bankrupt in that way. Whereas if animals in the wild naturally hunt to kill, well, that their blood is not on our hands directly. And so for me it's about necessity. And if we can remove the need of necessity, then hunting a deer would be just an action that we do not because we have to, but because we want to. And then the idea of that want, does the consequence of the meat at the end, does that provide justification? It's about necessity for me.
Right. I feel like when I joined this table, the issue was, why be cruel? And I feel like, letting a deer live its whole life, and then, at the end of its lifespan, instead of letting it die from normal consequences from, having a crossbow, I feel like that's not cruel. in essence.
Sure. And I think that, I guess part of the problem with them would be, well, we wouldn't know how long some of the deers have lived. I mean, we have a rough, gauge of age, but I guess when they get to maybe 18 months old, they probably have fully grown. I don't know, but there'll be a point where we can't differentiate between the ones who are younger and the ones who are older.
Maybe we could tag them.
But then that in itself is almost like a safari park, like a form of, but here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you only eat hunted deer?
No, not at all.
Right.
It's super hard and expensive to get. So that's like
well, that's another thing. So it's
Yeah.
a financial problem.
Right.
So then we have an socioeconomic issue. But then by your own admission, and if you're not only eating hunted deer, I don't know if you eat any, but if you're not only eating hunted deer, then you are partaking in an industry that we could deem to be cruel then.
Exactly, yeah. Like
So-
these dining halls, they don't offer hunted deer. Yeah.
So in this situation where you don't have the option of what you would deem to be more humane, you only have something that you deem to be cruel, and then like maybe a vegan option.
Yeah.
How do you then justify partaking in something that you've accepted in yourself to be cruel?
Feels not good, and I feel like
Let's be honest.
Exactly, yeah. And I think I can do my best to find meat that is treated the most humanely available, but that's honestly the best I can do. I can't do anything more than that.
And it's interestingly that we use like most humanely or more humanely, but we don't say objectively humanely. We just say, well, it could be worse.
Yeah,
but
right.
but then surely the most humane thing to do would be to buy like the Beyond Meat burger.
Right.
That would be more humane than buying
Yeah.
like the ethically reared food.
Yeah. I also feel like going fishing in the wild, like I've eaten fish fresh caught from the sea, that feels a lot more ethical to me than.
But we use the word more ethical again.
Right.
So what we have to establish is it objectively ethical, not more or less, but just ethical objectively.
I just feel like clams don't have that much feeling. Like,
Oh well, let's take. I mean, I'm not going to get the bivalves. I'm not too interested. Like,
Okay.
I think that for me that has more of a logical and moral emphasis. But like sea bass or salmon or tuna would be different.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. And so, what moral justification do we have then to buy animal products in, say, supermarkets when we have an option of something that's less cruel or is not cruel objectively?
Well, I feel like people, some people have decided I'm going to eat meat because of the flavor. And so I think given that, people will, tend towards the most ethical side of that available and not ethical side. But I think as we pointed out, the options are not great.
Not yet. No. The options are getting better. And I said this question, I think it's to your friend Leo, and I'll ask you the same question: is sensory pleasure or the enjoyment of something, does that provide enough justification for what we do to animals?
Totally not.
Yeah, that's very honest of you.
Yeah.
I like that very much. And so we would argue then that when we buy these products, we are somewhat being morally hypocritical.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how that's what led me to the point of being vegan. Was I felt like, oh my god, I'm saying one thing, but I'm living another way, and that made me super like, oh my god. It's a weird realization.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I just think with my deer solution, I would feel justified with